Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
All right, so some very important things going on. I'm just going to cover a couple of the main ones, being the government shutdown and also the aid flotillas that are trying to breach the blockade of Gaza and possibly having some success doing it, as well as many of their boats being intercepted. So I'll get to that later. In some ways, these are kind of equal and opposite issues because when it comes to the government shutdown, there is a change in the dynamic of who has leverage and how it's being utilized in the United States government for the first time since Trump has come into power. And there are some interesting opportunities at play there, as well as some serious risks. So that's what I want to go over. And then you also have this kind of issue that's fundamental. It cuts to the heart of imperialism, which is Israel's illegal blockade of Gaza, and the fact that these peaceful flotillas are trying to penetrate that blockade to bring aid in. And it has been a foregone conclusion every time these boats try to do this that they will be intercepted, and that's kind of the point, is to bring attention to this issue. But there are some signs that they may, at least one of these boats may have gotten through, but we don't know that for sure yet. So I'll tell you what I know about that later. But you know, it's just interesting how disconnected what the Democrats are doing currently in Congress is from some of these more concrete things, whether it be the genocide in Gaza and aid trying to make it into there, or ICE on the streets, the militarization of the streets of America for various vague purposes, including ICE raids. And this shutdown of the government is not connected to any of that. So what this is, essentially the budget bill that Republicans drafted up that include cuts to healthcare, Affordable Care Act provisions, as well as Medicare, people's access to Medicare. This is what they've been talking about. People are going to be kicked off of Medicare for the last several months. So they're trying to get that bill through, but currently in the Senate, they need a supermajority because of the way these bills are. They can't pass it without some Democrat support. I don't know why they even pushed it this far, knowing that this complication was going to come up. But the Republicans have tried to do like a temporary stopgap thing, and then we'll negotiate, knowing that they can always use rescissions to just change their mind after an agreement has been reached. So Democrats, for the first time, are actually not backing down so far. And we have entered a government shutdown, which has caused both sides to immediately begin messaging to the effect that the other side is the one responsible for this shutdown, including Republicans, even in some cases using government websites for political messaging to the effect that Democrats have shut down the government, blah, 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 which is actually not legal, but they'll probably get away with it. And what this is over is Affordable Care Act tax credits that are going to be not renewed in this budget bill, as well as changes to Medicare that are going to kick a lot of people off. Now, the tax credits thing, when it comes to the Affordable Care Act, that's actually a big deal because it has a lot to do with what you pay, the customer-facing side of what people are paying for drugs like insulin. It's going to have a major effect on what people are paying for healthcare. And Republicans' rebuttal to the fact that Democrats do not want these things to be cut is that they are trying to give health care to, in their words, illegal aliens. So that's always the messaging they go with. It's obviously completely a lie. I believe what they're doing, and J.D. Vance did this, is tying it to something about emergency rooms, because they use these provisions in order to cover emergency room costs, which might include some people who are undocumented. That appears to be the basis upon which they are saying that Democrats are doing this over illegal immigrants. So it's completely not true, but they're gonna keep messaging to that effect. Doesn't seem like it's sticking right away, but it never does. They just keep going, and eventually it takes hold because that's what their audience wants to hear. And then the Democratic side, you're seeing a little bit more movement out of people like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. Trump kind of deliberately humiliated them in a White House meeting the other day and is using that for his messaging to try to downplay the fact that he has to negotiate with them at all and to try to embarrass them and get his audience whipped up. So you see Hakeem Jeffries kind of responding to that, saying, you can say it to my face, even though they kind of let Trump do this stunt of putting the Trump 2028 hats in front of them and took pictures of it. So that type of stunt is just the way Trump does politics. Probably many staffers around him that sort of arranged for that. That's just how they think. And then you also see AOC and Bernie, who are making a meaningful effort to inform people about this as well and get out front. AOC even said something to the effect that Republicans have said that AOC is running these negotiations. Well, if that's true, feel free to come to my office and negotiate directly. So that was an interesting thing for her to say. My main take on this is that it's a moment where a lot is possible. And the fact that Democrats have not backed down to the point that this becomes a shutdown is a good thing. They have to quickly articulate what their reason is for doing this. It's not enough to just say Republicans are the ones who are causing this shutdown. I honestly don't think that's the message for them at the moment. I think they have to own the fact that they're doing this government shutdown, and they have to use this opportunity to articulate very clearly why they're doing it. And that's where I think that the thing about Affordable Care Act, tax credits, and Medicare, look, it's important. Medicare is a motivating issue for people throughout the country. So if they want to focus on that, it's great. Whatever it was enough of a sticking point for them to actually do this. So if they feel like they can craft a meaningful message around that, go ahead and do that. Like I said, we've seen more motion from them. So at least they're trying something. In my opinion, though, we're at a moment where Trump is articulating his intention to and beginning to utilize the federal government against citizens and citizen organizations in a way that people have feared for a long time he might do. And that's starting to manifest. And so people are going to associate those two things. And Democrats, with their own base, have an opportunity to tie this shutdown to a general sense of resistance against Trump. And that's where this whole thing about tax credits, that's really not going to cut it. What you need is you need people to feel like this is you standing up for them and for their rights in general. And that's not the easiest thing to do, because Republicans are going to use any opportunity that they can to say that you're making unreasonable demands, you are being ridiculous, these are crazy radical Democrats. Me personally, I say let them do it. It's not a very political move. I don't know the political ins and outs of this like a Washington insider, but what I do know is that this is the kind of thing that your average American who opposes the Trump agenda, which very likely at this point is a majority of Americans, they want to see meaningful resistance to the way Trump is utilizing the government. And a government shutdown symbolically is a great example of that. It is a good opportunity for you to show that you are resisting Trump's agenda in some meaningful way, and possibly to even take advantage of the situation in ways that you weren't able to before. So what Trump has said he's going to do is lay off a bunch of federal workers. They want to cut into programs that supposedly Democrats like. And he says that these things are irreversible. However, he's been very vague about these things that he says he's going to do. I'm sure they have some things on the docket, but I think like most things with Trump, it's mostly a bluff. And what they do have the power to do because of this shutdown, I want to be very clear about this, is that it is going to allow Trump and the executive branch, people like Russell Vought, who runs the Office of Management and Budget, it's going to allow them to make a lot of the decisions internally about what the government is spending money on. And so that's where Trump is able to say that we're going to be cutting programs Democrats like, because that's true. They are able to allocate the money within the executive branch sort of without oversight and as they see fit during the course of this shutdown. However, what they don't have is access to the funding that was coming to them because of this bill. That includes funding for ICE, funding for building ICE facilities, and yes, money that normally goes to the troops and paying their salaries. Troops that Trump has been threatening to weaponize against the American people. So it gets tricky when it comes especially to the troops. Oh, they're trying not to fund the troops. But again, this is an opportunity for Democrats to tie that to the fact that Trump is abusing the federal government, he's abusing the military, and any meaningful opposition party simply would not allow him to do that. So this is an opportunity to not allow him to do that. And Russell Vought is making very existential claims about, we're going to get rid of the DEI programs, and they're cutting funding to certain states, things about climate and other Republican pet peeves. Russell Vought said something about green new scam funding is what he's going to be cutting to these different states. So this is not them just saying, okay, well, we're going to punish you for shutting down the government. They are using this as an opportunity to continue to politicize and go after these issues that they view as political. And that's why I'm saying Democrats should do the same thing. Rather than just making this about what appears to the American people to be minute details about tax credits. If AOC and Bernie Sanders can do a good job of articulating the importance of these things, that's great. But I can promise you that the main thing that's on people's mind is not only the money in their pocket, money related to healthcare, but also the abuses of the government, ICE, masked agents in cities, these military occupations that we're starting to see. To the extent that they can use this shutdown to appeal to some voters out there and make it look like they're doing something, which voters have been begging them to do since this Trump administration started, that's where you want to focus your attention. And the way I think you could do that is, like I said, Trump is basically threatening to use federal workers as leverage in this situation. He wants to leverage them against the Democrats. He's pointing out that these are things Democrats don't want to be cut. Why is he saying that? Because he does not want this shutdown, and he has said that. So they're trying to spin it like Trump can do even more evil and terrible things if there's a shutdown. To some extent, that's true. But what's also true is that he cannot continue doing. Trump is a spending president. He's not an austerity president. He pretends to be. This forces him to be an austerity president. That's good. That's better than Trump spending trillions of dollars on ICE facilities and military campaigns within the United States. And what Democrats can do is they can say, okay, the shutdown is about these Affordable Care Act credits and Medicare. That's what we want. Those are our demands. But if you're going to fire federal workers, what we're going to do is we're going to add another demand to that list. We're going to say that you have to get these masked agents off the streets. That's a demand now. We're all in lockstep. We all agree this is a demand. No, less ICE funding. And then if you escalate more, and for every state that you cut off funding to, we have a new demand. This is a new thing that we're adding. Matter of fact, you can't send the National Guard to these states. And actually, you can't build this ICE facility in a way that skirts federal law. And you add another demand. This is the way that they can start exerting pressure on Trump. And I'm not saying that it's about winning those concessions. I'm not sure exactly what that would look like. But the point is, that's how you play ball with Trump. You go for the fucking headline. It doesn't matter how possible it is. Because right now is a moment where you can start to direct the attention of the nation in that way. You have the power to do it. That's how Trump utilizes his power. Is he controls the conversation by throwing something crazy out there. Now you have to respond to that. Yes, they're going to respond to that by calling you crazy, radical, communist terrorists. They're already doing that. They're already doing it. So you can extract accessions, even if it only comes back to the Affordable Care Act and the Medicare thing. By stacking on other things as demands, you apply pressure so that Trump has to acquiesce on those things, and it's also a messaging win. And if things get even crazier, you can stand on those demands and really use it as leverage to stop the administration from this Project 2025 agenda, which Russell Vought was one of the authors of, by the way. So it's one of the paths here. It's a chaotic path, and I'm not saying a government shutdown would be good. But I think in the general consciousness of Americans, I think you could make a serious case that the behavior of the executive branch has warranted a government shutdown until some kind of negotiation process can take place and Trump can be brought back into the bounds of democracy. That's not something I think is that possible unless Democrats reassert boundaries on what Trump can and can't get away with. And he's been saying publicly that he doesn't know why you're not doing that more. The ability for you to do that is wide open. He is expecting you to figure out some way to do it. So ignore his threats, Ignore the unhinged nature of the things he says, and you have to escalate, because that's the only way that he is going to respect any of your demands. All right, so this aid flotilla, this is a series of boats. They've done this periodically over the last several months and really for years, trying to break the blockade of Gaza. This particular fleet took off from Spain. And like I said, most of these boats have been intercepted. This included academics and lawyers from various countries, as well as Greta Thunberg, who was again arrested on one of these boats, which has happened a couple times, I believe, to her specifically in the past couple months. She has been on the forefront of this particular effort, which might seem obscure to a lot of people, but this is actually a very particular pressure point that has to do with Israel's general occupation of Palestine and Gaza. And this is a peaceful method of trying to break that blockade and circumvent the effort to starve and snuff out Gaza. So this is exactly the type of activism that, first of all, the whole world is always saying is the right way to do activism, and also that the world needs to see right now. To the extent that there's any like real bravery happening in activism on a global stage right now, this is what it looks like. Israel's going to call them terrorists. They're going to call them monsters. They called these selfie boats or something like that during one of the last trips. But the reality is this is something that is putting meaningful pressure on Israel. And that's why they are having to pretend to play very nice about this. Recently, they were bombing one of these aid flotillas actively. So in the course of this, there is one boat that seems to be potentially getting close to the shore of Gaza. It's not clear that that's what's happening yet. If you look on the Flotilla Tracker website, you can see one point. Most of these points are boats that were stopped and intercepted by Israel. And you see this one that has entered the waters of Gaza. Some people are saying this is a glitch, that they couldn't have covered this much ground or sea in the time that this update occurred. There's some indications that maybe an interception happened or the boat was stopped, but there hasn't been any word about it. I believe this boat lost its signal at a certain point, and the only blip that was received is this one where it's inside the waters of Gaza. It could be getting towed, or there could be something else going on. Or they could possibly be breaking the blockade, which would be a historic achievement. So probably by the time this video is out, people will know that. I think that's probably the least likely option, that they're breaching the blockade successfully, but maybe. And this is really what the Democrats, if the Democrats were any type of meaningful opposition party and had any type of solidarity with, the people that they're supposed to protect both inside America and outside America, they would be talking about this. Instead, there's no discussion of it at all. And I want to note one last thing before I go here, that this is a good time, because of this shutdown, to apply pressure on Democrats, specifically about this issue. There are strikes breaking out globally about this. People are in the streets over this, calling for general strikes because of this. This is a huge global story, and it only becomes more so every time they do one of these flotilla attempts. And right now is a moment where, if Democrats are under pressure to talk about this more, that can be something that they bring up more in the context of applying pressure on the Trump administration. Why? Because the Trump administration allowing aid into Gaza, something that would be pretty obscure to most of his followers and probably something that they don't care about if they don't support it. Trump could make that happen easily. And so Democrats applying pressure on Trump in a moment where they actually have leverage over him is a path to pressuring the federal government to do something about Gaza. Obviously, there's other asks to be had there, like don't clear out Gaza and create a water park there, stop Israel from continuing to bomb there, etc. But like I said, this is a pressure point, and there is a path to pressuring members of the government that could actually lead to real pressure being put on Netanyahu himself. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm not trying to give anybody false hope, because this is Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer that we're talking about. But at the end of the day, this shutdown represents a moment where American politics could change a lot. And if Democrats hold tight on not reopening the government, and it becomes something that defines at least the current moment of politics, at least for a few weeks, there will be opportunities to pressure different representatives to focus on different issues and potentially add that to the list of issues that is used to apply pressure on the Trump administration. It's a long shot, but like I said, this is what an opposition party should be doing. So just in terms of articulating what could be done, and there's definitely an opportunity to apply pressure on Democrats in this moment, because things are going to change a lot. And once they get a taste of the fact that they have some leverage over the Trump administration, they may well be willing to use that to extract some real concessions. And we should do everything that we can to try to make them do it.